So there's a few things I want to say to preface this and start us off. Anytime, and I'll probably reiterate this while I have everybody up here as well. But like anytime I start talking about having a nuanced conversation about like liking a candidate, but like not for everything, and the places that I disagree kind of tend to be big wedge issues for myself personally, and those kinds of things. Inevitably I get told that this is the system that we're given, we have to operate within it, and da 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 da. Or I get told, work on ranked choice voting, work on the interstate national popular vote compact, and work on some other key things that would be helpful to change the system. So that's what we're doing here, because my state has already signed the national popular vote compact, and we're voting on ranked choice voting this year. So kudos to us, I suppose, as a wonderful state of Colorado. So yes, I should have a few more people joining us soon. I have like some facts and figures written down, but I really want to kind of keep this conversation broad and loose. Just big P politics. That's what we're talking today, because election is next week. Let me just take a moment and say thank you guys for coming in. Give you a few moments if you want to just say a few words about you. Jordan, let's go with you first.
Hi. I'm off to wagon, I guess. If you don't know me, I'm from Minnesota. Just do a lot of random content, but a lot of random content ends up being political, I guess. So yeah, here I am. I've gotten the opportunity to meet Tripp when we were out in Colorado and stuff, and I'm glad that she keeps inviting me to do this kind of stuff with her.
Right on, man. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Unbraced, thanks for coming in and talking with us today. I know that you've been involved in the politics a lot this time around, and I really appreciate you coming and sitting with us. Oh,
You have to turn your mics on. It's a new thing that the kids are doing. Hey y'all, I'm Unbraced Sun. I talk about current events that are happening. I do a lot of crowdsourcing where we are learning together and trying to figure things out. My thing is not sitting with people with like minds, but sitting with people with diverse minds and diverse opinions to understand how to change the system from within, as well as changing to being more sustainable in your own community. So doing things within the system as well as doing things on your own.
right on, right on. I think that is a perfect balance to talk about. We have a lot of different avenues. Like I know that on the last panel we had touched briefly on like legislative districts and how we have these forms of lanes open for us to engage with and become active citizens. And in that same vein, things like ranked choice voting and what I'm calling new political strategies is stuff that like most things start on the grassroots level, very much like in the hometown. In fact, most ranked choice voting at this level is happening more like in the city and the city and like local municipalities and that sort of deal, and it's growing. There's something like I think it said 15 states where there is some sort of like legal like local action where there's a ranked choice voting option instead of just like the regular primary that we're used to, and most of those are in like municipalities where party doesn't really matter much. And so like that's important here, because I think that one begets the other. Like if we opened up ranked choice voting, parties would matter less because it'd be less about mudslinging and us versus them and more about the actual policies about it. And so I think that's like one really great like tool towards combating whether it be like the apathy in politics, the idea that like my vote doesn't matter because I live in like a solidly one color state and I may vote the other way. It breaks that apart. It breaks up so many different ideas. And just the fact that it would give people who feel they don't have a voice because it's an either A or B choice, it breaks that apart. And so like I really want to see that kind of proliferated. I know that in Maine and in Alaska, it's been fully done across the board. Every election they do is ranked choice voting, and that's fantastic. I love to see it. I was really hoping to have Watchful Coyote, Jack, in the mix with us today, but I just don't think the timing worked out for us too, unfortunately. But I was really hoping to get his insight on what ranked choice voting was actually like, because I think they passed in 2020, 2021, so they don't have a lot of history with it, but they do have some more than a lot of us do. So when it comes to the way things are run now, the first question that I really want to propose is that we get met with a lot of people who don't like this system, and therefore don't want to participate in it. And so the ranked choice voting, the National Popular Vote Compact, and things like this are kind of, in my opinion, ways to try and revitalize that engagement. With that being said, I'm sure they're not the only ones. And in this time where we only have like a week until we're actually doing the voting and stuff, I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts on just the process as it is and what you think would vitalize more people to participate. Whoever wants, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. If anybody has words, all right, go ahead, Unbraced. Go ahead, I've got you right here.
Oh no, I was pointing at him first, but I guess that looked more like a me, please. um, so as it is right now, there's so much red tape. There's so much disenfranchisement because we haven't been um, a government by the people, right? We haven't been at our town halls on a regular basis. We're definitely not working within our legislative districts, as we spoke about on our last show, and we just don't have time to be um, watching what the police are doing, watching what the city council is doing. We don't have time to look over all of those things. What's up, Tony? Welcome in. Um, and so now with TikTok and us kind of 2020 kind of giving us a shift, right? Now we're actually looking at and recognizing that we do have the power to change the things, but we have to do a lot of work. It's incremental change, and we have to be prepared to do it for the long haul.
Yep. I think one of the big things is that a lot of people are, and I'm not, myself included, I'm kind of excited to get over the election cycle. Not that I'm going to stop doing things, but like I'm really wanting to get through this, like, because it always gets so like vitriolic right before, and I'm really excited to move on and keep doing progress after like that subsides a bit. Jordan, we'll go ahead and go with your words on this question, and then we'll fold Tony in on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest issues with the lack of involvement in government or not wanting to participate in the system comes down to just how complicated our governmental system is. Like, a lot of people do not even understand the basics of how, a legislation is passed. Schoolhouse Rock didn't do a good enough job back in the day, and they don't understand how the process works, and therefore it gets really frustrating because it's really easy to be apathetic. Like, we go out, and you saw this, I thought, really after Obama, and maybe I'm a little nostalgic about it because that was my first election, 08 Obama. That was the very first time I ever voted, got it up early before school, went, hope and change and all that shit. And then, nothing changes from a presidential election. Like, nothing specifically changes from that. It doesn't change without Congress. It doesn't change without the Senate. It doesn't change without support for the legislation that you want to see passed. And a lot of people, especially people more on the left, people more on what we'd call the progressive side, I suppose, we are really apathetic voters. We do not turn out for midterms. We have horrible roll off or fall off on down ballot races and things like that. And I think that we're a little bit of a victim of our own making, in the sense that we get really energized about specific candidates and we will go and we'll get them elected, like we did with Obama. We saw a lot of that kind of behind Bernie Sanders and stuff like that, but we fall apart as those movements kind of culminate, and we feel like we won and now we can be done, and we don't stay with it, and that's the problem, and it comes down to a lot on the left. The left is a big umbrella of a lot of different groups. Democrats cover everything from what, in theory, the communists and the socialists would be, all the way to the moderate Reagan Republicans at this point, and everything in between. And so where the right really has the advantage of being low information, one issue voters, you have a bunch of people who are really passionate about really specific things, and you can't make all of them happy, and that ends up with a lot of infighting, and it makes it really difficult to keep everybody vitalized and pushing for a momentum of a common cause. Because if you can't get the gratification in the next election or two elections, you feel like it's not worth doing. And that's the frustrating thing, is when we don't put the work into 5, 10 elections, 20 elections down the road, because that's what it's going to take, we go and we take steps backwards. And as we take those steps backwards, we end up losing any and all that progress we've made, which we've now seen with Roe. I mean, we're taking half century steps backwards at this point, and then it feeds on itself. That's disheartening. You get discouraged, and it's not worth participating in. The system just needs to break and burn, and that's not going to help anybody either. And I think that that's where it really gets down to, and trying to message this appropriately is a monumental task that people on the left fail at miserably, repeatedly, every election cycle.
Yeah, I will say that when it comes to messaging, one side tends to be a little bit more solidified than the other, and that's always been one of the key issues. But I think that in essence, what we're seeing is a breakdown of what I would consider like traditional ideas of compromise. That at certain points and junctions in our history, we've had to come to the table with people who really do not see eye to eye and come to a point where we understand and agree. And like we've seen it happen, we've
failure to communicate.
Exactly. We've seen it happen in the past, but we're seeing it less and less these days. Tony, to fold you in on this question, we were basically asking, as the system exists now, how we feel about it. We're a week from election day, and we're going to move towards talking about the different things that we have. But I want to get your thoughts on where we are today. And thanks for being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure. As it stands today, most people are so wholly disconnected from what government actually is and could be, and then we make sweeping generalizations about the validity of that system, not understanding what's happened to it and who largely is responsible for course correcting it. And at the end of the day, most people want the same kind of quality of life. The externalities of how we dress or present ourselves or the things that we're into, that's beautiful, and that's what makes us diverse. But at the core of it, we all want the same things. And I think oftentimes we forget just how much matters down ballot. In these small town elections, it matters. And these people are going to be directly responsible for influencing the types of businesses that come to your town, the types of jobs. They're the ones working with economic development. And it can't be understated. And as much as we want to be confused about the rhetoric surrounding the presidential election, who to believe, where to look, what's actually going on, is it above everyone's pay grade or something? Like, why does it seem so dense for people? And if we think that's bad, then wait till you get to how little most people understand the organizations and civics that make up their neighborhoods and affect their day-to-day lives. It's a tragic situation, and I think the only way out, just like Joe Wagon was saying, it's education. Schoolhouse Rock was a thing, and it's a piece of a very large puzzle. But without proper implementation, like rigorous implementation, and then follow through and education, any activist group is going to putter out and lose steam, or become a meme of itself, or become entrenched in the very thing it swore to destroy. And so the state of political affairs is, for me, everyone's focused on the big pieces too much. So much so that we've forgotten just how important those little pieces are, and like our micro contributions to what's immediately around us.
Yep. I feel you, man. I will say that that's the disheartening part. The disheartening parts are the disjointed, because people will ebb and flow out of this. There are people who will become hyper engaged and then burn out and flame out, and then like the apathy sets in even deeper. And there are those that like my buddy Catalyst, who just joined us, has been working for years and years and years trying to work in certain directions to make this anti-apathy campaign. And we go against. It feels like we're fighting this uphill struggle in this battle because of several things. We talked last time about how attention spans are super short, and that that's a struggle in and of itself. But when we're talking about the things about like our rights, there's also the things about that's a double-edged coin of our responsibilities go with it. Like you can't just show up and get all of the goods without any of the work. And voting is somewhat baseline. Engaging in the system is needed for everybody, at least on some level, to feel like we're going to go anywhere. And I think that one of the biggest issues that I have with this current system as it stands is that our Congress, whether we want to talk about 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, what have you, has progressively gotten worse and worse to the point where they've slowed down and done absolutely nothing for progress. And so like that right there is a big issue. And for some of us, it tunes us out. It's like, well, if nothing's going to change in this decade, then like nothing's going to change. But like that, unfortunately, is kind of it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Kind of you fall into that error state kind of deal because you have to put in the effort, you have to show up day to day, and it's a monumental movement by lots of people, not just one. So like support community efforts, and then with changes like ranked choice voting and the National Vote Compact and how they kind of play in and tie in, there have been individuals that have been very motivated for a large number of years. Like I said, none of these are newer than 20 years old. Like people have been working on it in their hometowns, and now we're starting to see them kind of get off the level and get up and towards actually seeing them on national stages. Like I said, I'm voting on Prop 131 next week, which is a ranked choice voting initiative in the state of Colorado. So like we're getting there. Slowly but surely things are paying off. And now I'd like to turn the attention to our newest guest, David the Catalyst. We were just asking about how we feel about this current system and how, just kind of the frustrations that might go into changing some things. Thank you for coming here, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Tripp, for having me. And I apologize. I missed your text the other day. I was traveling. I was actually in DC this weekend. And yeah, thank you. And obviously I'm all about this particular this topic, and it's ironic. Tony and I were talking this morning about this. There was overlap in this particular conversation in terms of strategy. What do we do? What strategy do we need to implement to spark consciousness within the collective? Because that's where we are. People are so, like as y'all have identified, people are angry, people are hurt, people feel apathetic. They feel like their stuff's not gonna, things aren't gonna change. They're not seeing the fruit of the work. And there's several things that have to happen at the same time. One of those is we have to teach people how to be activists and what that means. Right? Because a lot of this work that we're doing, we may not live to see. And, Tony and I talked about that real quick this morning. I was in DC. I had a chance to go to African American Museum, and my forebearers, the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act happened in 1964. There were my forebearers who worked on this stuff in 1900s, 1910, 20, 30, 40, 50, and never saw any fruit of their labor. We have to understand that part of what we are doing, we will not live to see. But we have to do this work because, we are investing in a future, not sacrificing, right? We throw those two words around a lot. People say, oh, you got to sacrifice for your kids. No, you don't. No parent sacrifices for their kids. All parents invest in their kids. Everything we do as parents for our children, it's because we want to see them thrive somewhere down the line. We're not just giving it up for nothing. That's a sacrifice, an investment. And so I think that's one, we have to help people come into that consciousness about the change that they want to see. It's to say, look, you're here and you're benefiting because somebody put into you. You owe the social contract. You have a duty as a citizen and a neighbor, which goes beyond you just paying your taxes and voting. It happens, way after November 5th, 365 days after this election, you've got to put in your work. And over time, if everybody's doing a little bit, a lot gets done. But we have to be the check and the balance to these systems, right? These systems will only be as good as we are. And if we're not paying attention, they will be corrupt. They will run amok. They will get out of control. So first thing we have to do is when we're talking to people about the change we want to see, we need to help them understand this is lifelong work. You're not just going to do this weekend. You're not just going to protest and get your sign and it's all going to be good. This shit takes time. So yeah, man, we've got to do a lot of that stuff.
You're right. You're absolutely right. What I want to say is that we have to encourage people to show up. And like when I say lunchbox day-to-day job, I'm not literally showing up every single day. Like I wish I could. I really wish I could. But I have like, a work gig and like a lot of other plates spinning and stuff like that. But I have certain goals that I make sure I make progress on any chance I can. And so like this conversation right here is a perfect example. Like I put forth the effort to do these because I find them worthwhile, and I'm creating a record on the back end so that way hopefully, in 2 or 3 seasons time when I do pop off, I can just like fill everybody's brain all at once. But so to get back to like the actual voting of it, like the everyday bit, as long as you are engaged to some degree, some level. I mean, I'm not trying to push for people hardcore, nose to the grind of civic engagement 100% of the time. But like to get somebody to go from 0 to 10 in their livelihood, I think is a great accomplishment. And I think that to wrap this back, the ideas of the electoral college is defeating in a lot of ways, because it really feels like if you live in a solid colored state and don't agree with that color, that your voice isn't being heard. And because of that, a lot of people tend to sit out on these elections. In fact, Nick Powers does an amazing series where he talks about Texas and a bunch of other states where if they had just gotten, like, if the people who were disillusioned to the fact that their vote wouldn't matter actually got up and did go vote, it would in fact matter, and it would have changed things. And so in that regard, I see something like the National Popular Vote Compact as being extremely important. And I want to really quickly read through some statistics on it that I went up and looked up, because we're almost there. Like as it stands, we're only a couple of states away from it actually working, because we've already had states like California, Colorado, I'm not going to go through all of them, but like big states, DC itself, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, all of these have already voted on it and passed it. There are something like 18 to 20 states that are voting on it currently and considering it. And there's only like, I think 8 states where like no legislation is being heard on the National Vote Popular Compact. And yes, it's like Texas and Florida and Mississippi and a few other states. But like, because of this movement that has been happening for 20 years plus or what have you, like we're this close to potentially breaking the Electoral College and then thus shifting our political landscape by a whole hell of a lot. And so that action, because of people who have cared so deeply for it on that particular issue for so long and put in that day-to-day work, we are seeing some fruit, minimal fruit, and we don't know exactly what will come next. If it's going to be better or worse is going to definitely take participation on everybody's part. So on that note, I want to just open the floor to the idea of the National Vote Popular Compact. Does anybody have any words? Unbraced, come right on up.
Okay, so I thought maybe, because y'all know I love pie, that I would give a little something with pie just to kind of do a little intro, because sometimes it's hard for me to do details. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Hi there, Citizen Tripp. I'm here to spread the word about the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and an innovative agreement between states that aims to ensure the presidential candidate who wins the popular vote across the nation wins the election. So every vote counts equally.
I asked them to be really short. And so what this means is, instead of, it looks like when I go to Ballotpedia, you can read about it. So I put this up here for you guys. It looks like when we actually look at this, that they're normally campaigning in about 1 out of every 5 states, and 1 out of every 5 people are actually their goal. Because of the way the states are weighed out, and that's a lot more details than I can get into, and it's not fair. So they're spending on what they call battleground states. So here in the state of Arizona, we've seen Harris, we've seen Waltz, we've seen Obama, Trump, everyone plenty of times, but they haven't gone to the other states to say these things. So we're hearing it first. Like I heard that Kamala is going to be dealing with water rights. And so I'm getting excited about these things, but not everyone can. And it's not okay to be pandering to a small group of people to get 1/5 of a vote. And that's what Democrats and Republicans are fighting over. Just that. We've got to do better. So yeah.
Great words. I want to really quickly take a moment to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody who is sitting in this room with us. We're up to almost 60 people. Thank you so much for being here, tapping on the screen, sharing it with people, getting more people in this room so we can have this conversation. Because, it's a week from politics. Some of us are voting on these very things. I and Logic and Liberty are actually going to be voting on Proposition 131, which is ranked choice voting in Colorado. And that's going to take me to bringing in our new guests. Real quickly, I know that Logic, you're on a short time span, so I'm going to go ahead and let you come up first and speak some words. And thank you so much for being here. And then right after, we'll get Miss Tiffany up.
Yeah, so I got the big screen. I wanted to chat a little bit about ranked choice voting. And I did vote yes. I actually voted today. So I voted yes on Prop 131. There's a few reasons for it. As far as the arguments against, I didn't find them very compelling, to be completely honest. The main argument is that we're going to have an increase in wasted ballots because people simply don't understand how to vote in a ranked choice election, which I think can be easily addressed if we talk about community outreach and just ensuring people have the resources they need. Even if they link a YouTube video link to go look up how to do the ranked choice voting, I think there's ways around that. Additionally, they are concerned that finances or money will influence our elections. That was an interesting one to me. So for me, I support it for a multitude of reasons. I think the fact that we could potentially get independent and moderate candidates in that open primary onto the general ballot. There is some risk, I guess you could say, in more Democratic or more Republican states that you could have more than one Republican or more than one Democrat candidate on it. But I don't think that's a loss. I think that's a good thing. So we're going to see what happens here in Colorado. Kent Theory, I don't know if you guys know a lot about him, but I would look him up. He's doing a lot related to trying to push forward more bipartisan and open elections. So here in Colorado, he helped implement a third-party committee to review redistricting. And that's to ensure both sides don't do it. Okay, let's be honest, because both sides do. All right. So if we can make it fair and ensure that we have an independent party reviewing this redistricting to make sure one side doesn't get a level up, that's going to make the voters in states where they don't feel heard feel a little bit more heard. So I have a lot of, encouragement from the fact that he's behind this movement here in Colorado. I think Nevada is also voting on it. There's a few other states. Alaska is voting to repeal it. So with full disclosure, Alaska rolled it out just a couple of years ago and they're voting to repeal it. It could be because they didn't like the outcome of their election from ranked choice voting. So you might see some counter efforts there as this starts to get passed. But
can I chime in here just real quick? Because one of the comments said that they didn't understand what ranked choice voting is. So I don't want this conversation to get too carried away with people not being able to follow along. All ranked choice voting is you know how you say that you want to vote for the lesser of two evils, but if you do that, you're throwing your vote away? Ranked choice voting takes that risk out of your vote. So if you want to vote for a third-party candidate, you can go and say, that's my first choice. You rank them first, but then say, all right, I would prefer the Democrat to win over the Republican if that first candidate doesn't secure a certain percentage of the vote to be a competitive candidate. So whatever that decision is, your vote would automatically transfer from that first candidate to your second ranking choice. That's all ranked choice voting is. It allows you to vote for a third-party candidate without throwing your vote away and allowing, the Trumps of the world, because you really wanted to vote Jill Stein this election, but you don't feel like you can because, if you don't vote against Donald Trump, then we may end up with an even worse case scenario, that sort of thing. It allows you to kind of guilt-free vote the way that you want to vote and allows us to put more people realistically on the ballot. It gives third-party candidates a chance to campaign and have the opportunity to be on the ballot and be a competitive measure without being a spoiler. And that's just, it's been done. I know in New Jersey, like they're saying in Alaska, it's been really effective. People have been really happy with it, and it gives a much louder voice to people who don't feel like they're represented by either party but still want to participate in democracy. So that's all it is. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to try to explain it a little further, but want to make sure that everybody was caught up with that as we're diving right into the weeds on ranked choice voting.
Well, and it's easier to, if you guys go look up videos, it's easier to show the distribution of how those votes are distributed, I think, in a visual manner on a video. So I encourage you, they're all over YouTube, to see how your votes are distributed if your first candidate gets knocked out. And so what happens, though, is in the first round, if one candidate gets over 50% of the votes, they are the winner. And they continue doing that until a candidate gets over 50%. The nice thing, too, is it eliminates runoff elections. There's no need for them, so that eliminates a cost there. One thing I will say too is I think one of the primary benefits is the open primaries, completely open primaries. So anyone, regardless of their affiliation, is going to get an open primary ballot to vote for 4 candidates that they would like to see on the general election ballot. So that's what's happening in Colorado. I think there's a good shot at it getting passed, a qualifier there. You're seeing some state legislators push back on it. So Colorado, unfortunately, had a measure passed where they basically put a hurdle before it can be implemented. So we may not see it in the 2026 election, but hopefully the 2028. Now, what this means is, as a citizen, if you're in a state where this gets passed, put the pressure on your state legislature. Say, we want to get this done. We don't want any hurdles. We don't want any delays. Stop your nonsense. Get it done. Because I don't want to hear that it's going to take until 2028. That's 4 years after we approve it. That just, to me, that doesn't seem acceptable. So just stay engaged. And that's for all of your ballot measures, people. Follow up and make sure it's getting done the way it needs to get done.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And now I'm going to go ahead and invite Miss Tiffany up. Thank you so much for joining us, my dear, on this wonderful discussion. Happy to have you.
Sorry, I couldn't confirm. I had a doctor's appointment yesterday and I wasn't sure if my voice would work well today. So I apologize, but it's doing okay. I apologize. It's a little wavery, quaky. So I didn't get to hear everything that was said before I got up here, but it seemed that on this particular moment, you were asking for thoughts on the Electoral College and whether or not we believe that the Electoral College or the Interstate Popular Vote Compact was what we favor and why. Is that correct? Okay. All right. So unlike many of my followers, I actually very much support maintaining the Electoral College. I do not support the Interstate Popular Vote Compact. And there is a reason. The reason is, first of all, it would be eliminated immediately by a constitutional challenge. It is in the United States Constitution that the Electoral College was created in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention. I think it would actually be a unanimous decision coming out of the Supreme Court, if I'm being honest. So I think it would waste immense resources. I think it would waste immense quantities of public discourse, and I think it would be used to divide us further, which is not anything that America needs. But the other thing I want to stress is that America was designed as a United States of America to ensure that despite differences in our religion, in our status, in our choice of way of living, we would find a place to go. And states would be different. And there would be some place where everyone felt welcome. They were designed to be run differently. There's a reason states' rights were enshrined in the Constitution. And when we did that, it was because the forefathers recognized very, very early on that different people, we would have immense constant conflict between us if we were forced to try to make everybody be happy everywhere in the same way. That's why the states were empowered with states' laws, states' rights. And so it's really important to recognize that. But more than anything, we have high concentrations of populations in the coastal states that almost unanimously are on one side of the aisle or the other in those high concentrations of population. A lot of people would go, well, if there's more of them, then obviously they should get to decide everything. But the reality is that if we made a system where only the popular vote counted, all of our politicians would only focus on the coastal cities. They would only focus on the high population density areas, which would leave out every farmer in America. 12% of America lives in the areas that feed 100% of America. 100%, okay? And right, we import food. But if you took all the food we export as a country and you brought it back to America, we would be fully self-reliant. We would not need food from anywhere else to survive. The moment that their voices are no longer heard, that those people are disposed of, or their issues, what we would see are monopolies in those coastal cities, high-powered corporations descending, They would consume all of it. We would have no self-reliance for food, which is already happening and being challenged on a number of areas. We would see an entire portion of our population that would be told they don't matter. Their way of life doesn't matter. Their beliefs don't matter. Their way of thinking don't matter. And our politicians would have no reason to care about their existence at all. I do favor ranked choice voting on the other end of that spectrum. I do favor that. So a lot of people don't like to hear that from me. A lot of people love the interstate compact. I full-heartedly disagree. And I have lived primarily in large population dense areas, so I realize my voice would matter more than all of theirs. I feel like our forefathers were actually really, really intelligent in designing a system where every single person's vote did matter. Because if we went to a system that was only popular vote, literally 30 states in our country's voices would not matter. And they're the people that feed us. They're the
So
people
I will.
that like take care of us.
I would like to. I appreciate you, and I knew it was one. That's honestly one of the reasons why I asked you in here, because I knew you'd be a dissenting opinion. So thank you for it. I really do appreciate that. I will say that we kind of have something like that now. It's not the coastal cities, but like as Unbraced was saying, they are only going to swing states. Like I haven't seen Walz and Kamala and Trump come to Colorado because we're pretty like through and through blue. So like, then because of that, we're not getting the same. And now, of course, I don't want to pay attention to just national politics. Like I never do. I never want to just concentrate on the top ticket. And Jordan, I see you're coming up next. But like I don't want to just focus on that top ticket. But like that is, of course, where all the sensationalism, where we can all kind of collectively look at, because on the state level, we're all looking at different people. So like it's our common ground is the top billing. So that's why it is often the point of discussion. And that's what the National Popular Vote Compact does look to dismantle. And the idea behind that is the fact that, there has been several presidents or candidates that have received the popular vote but lost. And so like that is the issue that it's trying to correct. And I understand that there's a big contention there because land doesn't vote, people do, but like the people in the rural areas and stuff do deserve as much of a voice as the people in the city. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it off to Wagon. Thank you for having words.
All right. So I appreciate kind of the opinion you came. I do feel that it is almost entirely misguided from the aspect of the popular vote, or the Electoral College allows candidates to only focus on very specific parts of very specific states. For example, California gets no attention from either political party because they're a lock, right? As does Texas, is becoming a little bit more in play now. But there's more Republicans in California than there are Republicans in Texas, and those people are completely ignored. You talk about the rural areas, the farm areas in the United States. California has the biggest agricultural community in the country, but those are primarily more rural areas that are completely ignored on the national stage because their votes quite literally don't matter. If you are able to go after a popular vote, you are able to go pick votes out of specific states that are irrelevant, because if your state does not vote, if you don't vote with your state the way they go for the Electoral College, your vote does not matter. Your vote is not counted, quite literally not counted in the election. Where now states like California, there's a ton of Democrats, like 40-something% of Texas is Democrat. Those people could be used. You could go listen to those people in those states that are not currently represented and bring their voices in, and you could actively campaign in those areas to get the votes you need to win an election, where right now it's not worth the resources to do this. And the Electoral College was not designed to allow states to govern themselves and give everybody a place to go. The Electoral College was designed to give slave states enough voting power to be competitive in...
I didn't say that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought that's what you were saying was with self-governance and
so
the
those
states.
were two different things that they foresaw and accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say they were connected.
Okay, sorry. My mistake on that. But that is the whole reason the Electoral College exists, was to give low population slave states a voting. That's why we've got 2 senators too. Senators also give lower population states equal representation to every other state. There's 2 senators in California. There's 2 senators in Wyoming. The people's votes in Wyoming are more valuable than people's votes in California. They are more represented across the board, both with Congress people, within the Electoral College, and with the Senate. So like I don't see any positive aspect for even, because I live in a rural area. I mean, I do, and my vote doesn't matter out here in a lot of elections because rural areas are not currently relevant because of the Electoral College, and that's, I think, really something that needs to be focused on. And we still have the Senate, and we could talk about the merits of that, but the Senate is the leveling field for all of the lower population states.
All right. So yes, I appreciate both of you coming up with such great points on either side of it, and I understand, like, that's the nuance of this thing. And what I find is that the weight of it, that Osterwagen was saying about how, you know, the distribution between Californians and Wyoming is, you know, extremely off because, you know, because the two senators and the population and whatnot. There's also the idea of in the earliest days, I believe, I'm going to mess up these numbers like crazy, but like in the earliest days, they had the idea that a representative would represent a certain amount of people. I think it was like 20,000. I'm probably off on that, but like there's, oh, thank you very kindly. There's the idea that has been blown way out of proportion. Now we have representatives that, you know, hundreds of thousands, you know, 250,000 per district, that kind of thing. And it's like, it's way off. And so like, there's several different discussions to be had there, whether if we want more representation, which a lot of, you know, libertarian living people would be against, we want rules, not rulers, that kind of deal. But this system as it stands has been operating in this direction for as long as it has. And we see the problems with it. The fact that swing states get more attention than anybody else, the fact that there is an apathy because if you vote against your state's color, you just feel like you're not, you know, you're being disenfranchised. And things like the National Popular Vote Compact looks to dissuade that. It's not the only thing on the floor, though. And I think that both ranked choice voting and the National Popular Vote Compact kind of work in tandem and do relatively similar things. One of the things that I'm most about is the fact that it'll break down the idea of like the two-party system in a way that will allow for more policy being talked about instead of mudslinging. And I think, you know, those, you know, that idea of being a blue dot in a red state or a red dot in a blue state can be very taxing on somebody who wants to participate but feels like it's just like throwing their vote into a sinkhole. Yes, Miss Tiffany, go right ahead.
Actually, I wanted to ask you a question so I could sort of expand a little bit on this. Do you believe that it is ever good for all of our government to be controlled by one party?
No, not at all.
Okay. In the last 20 elections, there have only been 3, possibly 4 times, there's some dispute, that a Republican has won the popular vote. If we were to say that you should go with, and increasingly, it has expanded less and less that a Republican can win the popular vote, it would mean that all corporations would flock to Democrats. It would mean that all money would flock to Democrats. It would mean that all concentration of power would flock to Democrats. And it would also, the Electoral College is the only reason Kennedy's team even had a path to victory. They said it would have been impossible in a popular vote, like standard. They could have seen there was a path to victory because of the Electoral College. It would actually disenfranchise third-party candidates further because they could never afford to sway people in 50 states. They could never afford to try to get the
They don't have to swing states. With the popular vote, they don't have to swing states. That's the point.
With the popular vote, you have to get to people in every state, or at least in the states that are very, very one-party oriented. In the coastal
that's kinda,
large population areas.
There's really no.
But that's kind of my point, though.
Like, again, I'm going to say it doesn't matter because it's in the Constitution. So no matter what they did with this compact, it would be struck down immediately. Literally.
So the thing is, the Constitution is the way it is.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. The Constitution is the way it is, but it needs to be changed. It needs to be updated. It was made for people who they felt were uneducated and couldn't govern themselves and all these things, and those things are just not true. The concepts that we had before are just not true. We're up here discussing these kind of things. We can't have it where
made for people that weren't educated.
We can't have it where only 4 out of or 1 out of every 4 states are visited and directed on. We can't have it where people feel so disenfranchised that they're not voting anymore. We can't continue allowing it so that we don't have time to be in our government. We have to be in our government.
We're experiencing record voter turnout right now. We're seeing more people vote right now than we've seen in generations.
And when the popular vote happens and the most amount of people decide that they want someone to be their president, it should be an option. It shouldn't have an electoral college that overrides it. The electoral college overriding it seems very unfair, and
it doesn't override anything. It was how our country was created.
I'm gonna take the moment back here because we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, and I understand and I appreciate everybody's perspective. I want to start off by saying that the divide that we're seeing is the fact that what was, what is, and what could possibly be. Because, like, I agree with Unbraced that the Constitution itself is a workable document. That's why it has amendments. That's why we have updated. And, like, maybe we need another update. I know that at some point in another conversation, I think it was Tony's Live a couple days ago, we were talking about, you know, when was the last time it was actually, like, ratified and updated? We found out it was, like, 1992. So, like, I don't know if that's on the big P, like, level politics. Sorry, guys, I'm getting a bunch of notifications. I don't know if that's up, like, on the big P politics where, you know, like, they stopped doing those things because we stopped pursuing them to do them, or, you know, what have you. But, like, the Constitution is a workable document, and if we want to see it changed, again, it takes active participation, people holding on to the responsibilities they have as a citizen. And so in that regard, that's one of the reasons why the Electoral College is such a big point of contention, because somebody who lives in, you know, rural farmland in, you know, some of the middle states feel a certain type of way about, well, whether if they vote, you know, people from California are going to overpower them or what have you. And, like, I get that sentiment, but I also get that one person, one vote makes the most amount of sense. Because, like, you know, the direct democracy factor, the idea of, and, like, this goes beyond voting for initiatives and stuff, but just the idea that if our vote is to matter in any broad sense of the word, then one person, one vote makes the most amount of sense to me personally. And as somebody who exists, who probably somewhere left on this spectrum, I don't really know. By the way, I love the fact we have a really nice balance. I want to just take a moment to appreciate and congratulate every single one of you for showing up today, because, like, I love it. I love the fact that we can sit here respectfully with each other, even if we do kind of, you know, get in the tension and in the weeds. Y'all are really good people, and I'm thankful for y'all being here. I really am. Logic, I know we're coming up on your time frame, so do you have some words for us? Maybe?
I was curious because I don't know. Do you have any Republican states that have jumped on board with the popular vote initiative?
That's a really great question. Let's see.
Doesn't, like, Kansas or Missouri at least splits their electoral votes the way the state votes, which is sort of popular vote-ish? There's a couple states that do
Nebraska
that.
that does that.
Nebraska?
That's Nebraska.
So considering it, in the considering lane, we got Arkansas, we got Utah, we have Arizona, we have Ohio, Louisiana. In the, like, past column, I'm just going to run through all the states real quick. Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Illinois, Maryland, DC, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut,
anybody?
Rhode Island, Maryland, Vermont, Maine, and Hawaii.
So we see a pattern.
There's a very clear. There's something common with all of those states. I just wanted to, like, again, point that out, because I do think there's ways to work with the Electoral College. I don't hate Nebraska's setup where they split their electoral vote. I think that's a viable option, in my opinion, for states where, like, in Colorado, you have the blue area, the Denver metro area, that determines our electoral vote. Let's be honest about it. And then you have, there's a lot of red counties, agriculture counties outside of Denver that don't get a say in the electoral vote in Colorado. And if you split the electoral vote, to me, I think that's a better solution than the popular vote. And I'm with Tiffany on the Electoral College in that regard. And I think there needs to be at least some consideration given to the states that have jumped on so quickly from the jump.
Word. I see where you're coming from. And what I'll say is, from the jump is a little disingenuous. Like I said, this has been worked on for 20 years. This is not something that's been, like, happening overnight.
But I'm saying the first states that have passed it.
Yeah. And like I said, And like I said, in the considering rank, there are quite a few red states that are considering it, where it has been heard by one or two chambers, and they're actually moving on it. So, like, yes, all the ones who have passed it are blue, but not all the ones that are considering it are blue. So, like, there is some give and take there. There's just maybe a little bit more conversation happening in the red states where they're considering it. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm in a state that's already passed
Can
it,
we also
and we
can we
were
also
purple
just
for a time.
acknowledge can we also just
Go ahead.
acknowledge the fact that red states have the most gerrymandered districts and
Oh, I live in Maryland. That is
unpopular
not true.
representation of their people and populace and what they actually want, and tend not to. I mean, even when they pass ballot initiatives, they do everything they can. We just saw it with Ohio and their abortion ballot initiative. They try to do everything they can to subvert the popular vote of the people in their states on things that are designated as popular vote. And these people the people in power in red states have a very good reason to want to resist against anything democratic at this point.
Now,
I live in
to
Maryland.
a point,
I feel like we're losing, I'm going to be honest, I feel like we're losing objectivity. I don't want to get into a blue supreme.
yeah, no, I was just about to wrap that back around myself. So, for starters, I want to say that I've seen what Off to Wagon's talking about, where people had the say, and it still got legislated out one or the other. There's the Ohio thing, sure, but like the one thing that is a big point of contention for me actually involves the herb, because I'm a buddy tender. I've been watching those states. When I believe it was South Dakota passed rec, medical, and the right to grow all at the same time, they got all of that thrown away because of a technicality, basically. But it was because those people in power didn't actually want to make the changes, and so they found a loophole in order for it to not work. Now, I will say that stepping back, I don't see it as a red and a blue. I don't see it as a us versus them. I don't. And like in that regard, I understand that there is a lot of nuance in those politics. But when we're talking person to person and we're talking about what the people want for their representation, again, like 89, 93% of people agree. There's just a few things that we disagree on, and that's where that blue-red split actually occurs. Now, if we had a more active, engaged form of citizenry where, ranked choice voting was the law of the land, whether we agree with it or not, that would open up at least the fact that we wouldn't have to go A or B. There'd be A, B, C, D, and E. And like just from that, there's a breadth of allowing for different policies to be discussed in different manners. It's not just you're either with us or you're against us. And in that regard, that's what breaks this whole, like, it's not the only thing that breaks the two-party system, but it does start to crack it. And that facade will, like, hopefully slip away to the fact that we could make more progress if we just discount party entirely. And so in that regard, being the blue dot in the red state and what have you, doesn't mean as much if we had a better like integrated system entirely. And this back and forth, I have many amazing people on both sides of the spectrum who are all going to be voting differently this year and have voted differently for their entire political careers, and I love and respect them equally. I know that some of them are misguided, and I know that every single one of us have been subject to very personal propaganda. And I'm working through mine, and I hope everybody else is working through theirs. And when we come to conversations like this, setting aside that type of rhetoric, that red and the blue, is going to be much more helpful, because, if we get dogmatic and start pointing fingers at sides, that's the antithesis of progress. And Tony, you have been really quiet. We brought up Ohio, so I really want you to come up next and speak.
Thank you. Hi, by the way, everyone. At the heart of this entire question is, who is represented? Am I represented? Are people like me represented? And on both sides of this issue, somebody is upset about it. And so I think that ranked choice voting has stirred up resentment for certain results in certain places, be it local or state elections where it's happened. Ohio has tried it. I think the last time was like in Cleveland in the 40s or 50s or something. And it's had a bit of grumblings and movements here and there in different groups, but by and large, hasn't had much traction. I just want everyone to think about the rhetoric surrounding the power of your vote right now. On all sides of this debate, from everyone's angle, there's a serious level of distrust. And at the end of the day, like, that's the hurdle that we need to clear. And I just want to point out that Tiffany, you might be the one best suited to answer this question, but how many lawsuits does Bobby Kennedy have right now for people who are trying to keep him from being on the ballot?
Okay, so originally there were lawsuits being filed, 47 total lawsuits. There were 7 that made it past the point of actually getting into the courtroom before he was finally forced out financially. However, once he withdrew from the campaign and did what they wanted in the same states that the Democrats sued him and no Republicans sued him, in the same states that the Democrats sued him in to get him off the ballot, as soon as he tried to withdraw his name from the ballot, they sued to keep him on the ballot. And now they're suing him in 6 states to keep him on the ballot. Because it's better for them if he stays on the ballot in the swing states, but they still want him off the ballot in the states that are blue. Because he was drawing more from Kamala in those states. So right now, I
Blue
believe
states,
there
why
are
does it
9
matter?
active lawsuits right now.
Like that I'm sorry, I'm struggling to follow this logic. So if in the swing states where the votes matter, why would they want him off the ballot or on the ballot where if you lose, because traditionally third-party candidates draw more from Democrats than Republicans, why would they want him off there or on there but not on in the blue states where it doesn't really matter that he's there or not because they're going to go blue either way?
So let me explain it. So basically what was happening is that originally they believed he was drawing more from the Democrats. Statistically, that is true. Jill Stein pulls more from the Democrats. Cornel West pulls more from the Democrats. So originally they thought he was going to pull more from Kamala. So they started, the DNC and some of their PACs started suing him state by state, specifically in the blue states, to get him off the ballot. When he agreed to withdraw and he turned his support to Trump, it was because they had calculated that he was actually drawing more votes from Trump than he was from Kamala. So what he did was he said, he wasn't being sued by the Republicans. So he met with them. He tried to meet with Kamala too. And he said, hey, I'm going to withdraw from the ballot. He filed motions in every state to move to withdraw his name from the ballot. The swing states mattered most because he was drawing more from Trump and now he was backing Trump. So he wanted his votes to go to Trump. They said, we realize now that you're drawing more from Trump. So they sued to keep him on the ballot in the swing states while they sought to have him removed in the Democratic states, because in places like Maryland, he was drawing more from Kamala, but in the swing states, he was drawing more from Trump. So when he was against Trump, it was helpful, but when he was for Trump, it became unhelpful. And so they were hoping to continue to split Trump's vote.
And I understand that. Oh, we got. I understand that.
I got it.
Somebody's got their. Okay. To the extent that him throwing his support behind Trump obviously changed where he's drawing some support from party-wise. What I don't understand is it's irrelevant in Maryland, right? Like Maryland's a blue state, going to be a blue state, and so why would they put the resources behind that? And if he is in fact drawing more support from Trump supporters, why wouldn't they want to leave him on the ballot? Because he's going to do that nationwide. Then in that case, he's not going to magically draw more supporters from Democrats in blue states where he's drawing them from Republicans in red or in swing states. That it just I'm not following the logic there.
Super reasonable question. So when they originally started filing the lawsuits in the blue states, they thought he was drawing more from Kamala, but in a safe blue state, you're right, it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't matter, except that they were trying to financially drain his campaign so he couldn't actually focus the money on campaigning. That's why they sued him in New York first, and they succeeded. They got him thrown off the ballot in his home state of New York. All right, so that was the first state they sued him in, was New York. Then they went to California. They went to states where it's incredibly expensive to litigate, that were solidly blue, and they sued him there first so that they would drain his financial coffers. Then they turned their attention to the other states. And it was more than one group, right? First, it started with just the DNC. Then it became some of the DNC PACs. So then they started suing in multiple states at one time because financially his campaign could not sustain that onslaught. It was at the same time that they were denying him Secret Service protection. And as a result, he was spending almost $1 million a month on private security after he had 3 attempts to get to him by people with loaded weapons, some of them actually getting all the way into his home. So financially, it was to drain him. That was the initial effort. Then when it became clear he was not actually drawing, he was drawing from Trump in the swing states, it made more sense for them to keep him there. So in the same states they sued to remove him in, they then sued to keep him there.
Okay, so I do feel like we're kind of like well, we're at our hour mark, so I do want to just kind of make a little something real quick here. First of all, there is this beautiful orange heart right by Tripp's name. If we can take a minute, you guys can look at this as well. Oh, it doesn't show as well. Anyways, by the heart, click on the heart, and that's where if you want to gift from there, even if it's one single rose, it puts you on Tripp's team. Tripp is doing a lot of great work here with all of these, again, different minds. No one here, like, I've disagreed with many people on this panel, and they have disagreed with each other. It is what we do. So don't forget that we're on here giving you our hard work, our hard time. And yeah, this makes sense that they're going to do this, so long as they can use litigation and use all of their dirty tools. This is perfect time to kind of like talk about that. Like, what's happening to RFK, what happened to Jasmine Sherman, what happened to Jill Stein in this election alone can take like 6 to 10 conversations, because any third party, anyone other than Democrat and Republican, puts a threat on exactly what they've been doing, politics as usual. Well, from here on out, we're talking about politics as unusual. We're talking about panels of people talking about politics for 24 hours a day until the election, right? We're going to be here after the election, long after, talking about this. We do have to be creative. We do have to think outside of the box and solve the problems that we see in the future. So instead of saying, because this won't work because of this one reason or 7 reasons, we say, okay, it won't work because of these 7 reasons. That makes sense. Thanks for the logic. Now let's solve some of those 7 reasons. Let's figure out a way to go around that, because we can't keep saying the system's too big to fail. We can't keep saying that this is how the forefathers ran it and wanted it, and so they're right. We have to say, what do the people want? What has actually been corrupted? And how can we start to fix those things? And that's what this live is about. So thank you so much for all of your opinions. I don't know if we want to continue on what happened to RFK, because we can go on all the candidates and crap that has happened.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and take back over from this, because you're right. Like, this particular, like, I feel like there's been spaces in this particular election where we have seen kind of bigger holes. Like, don't get me wrong, I was a youngin', very youngin', during Ross Perot, right? During that whole spiel that got Clinton in office and whatnot. And, like, we can probably talk to her blue in the face about stuff like that. But at the same time, what we are currently working on, like, it is important to know the history of our voting. Yes, we're the adults in the room now. We have the opportunity to, like, make the changes for ourselves, but only if we can all come to the table and agree. And what is unfortunate is that more often than not, people who disagree stop talking to each other instead of looking for compromise. And so, like, but that's one of the things that irks me the most, is the fact that this blue and red division has gotten so bad that, like, I don't think that some of these people would normally sit and talk with each other on any given normal day unless they all lovingly respected me. Thank you guys again for being here, because, like, you know, this is important stuff. This is the compromise of it. I also want to say thank you to everybody who's following and liking and sharing and all that stuff. Y'all are making my day, my week, my year. Thank you very kindly for that. For right now, I kind of want to just take a little bit of shift, because I think no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, we can all agree that there's a lot of corruption, especially up towards the top and whatnot. And so one of the newer strategies is this anti-corruption laws, right? This idea that we can put into place where it's literally illegal for you to take bribes and all this other stuff. There's a great framework, the American Anti-Corruption Act, that, you know, it works as just that, a framework. And then on the city and local levels right now, like in Pennsylvania and other places, they are using the framework, adapting it to, like, their specific, like, municipality, and trying to get it passed, like, local level. This is why voting down ballot on your initiatives and your proposals is so vital, because it's direct democracy that we can use to take action in this system to change it for the better. Anybody have any words on corruption, anti-corruption? We're shifting a little bit here intentionally. Yeah, Unbraced? All right, come on up, Unbraced.
I think one of the things that we need to do is look at where the laws have changed. If we could look at where the laws have changed, we can start seeing, like, Citizens United. Of course, I think we all agree on that. I don't know anyone that's like, oh no, Citizens United, that's the best thing ever, which is where they basically co-opted sorry, can you hear me?
It's okay. Yes.
Okay, got a call. Where they basically co-opted a lot of our power by saying that corporations can give money now, and that money is actually thought of as speech, and that's going to be a big issue. And we start to look at where these laws have been passed that take that power away and we start to look at gerrymandering. So I think it's very important that we're paying attention to the derivative of where it happened. Instead of going to new laws and passing these new laws, go to where the laws were broken first, especially because a lot of times those are packed bills.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Very good point. There is a point to which we have the crux of the situation, where the root started and why we're here where we are. Again, Logic, I know we're coming up on pretty much your ending time. Did you want to speak any more before we move on?
Yeah, I just want to say I fully agree. I think if we can have political disagreements and keep it like it's all good, you're still a human. I'd probably enjoy conversations with you on other topics. We won't agree completely politically. That's fine. But ultimately, if all of us want what's best or what we believe is best for this country, and if we can find solutions that serve in the most fair possible way and in the most representative way, I don't see how we lose. I do believe campaign finance reform should be a top priority completely and utterly because we have the national support for it. So I'm going to try to dive in and start working on that. And again, I might not get anywhere, but we need citizens to start taking up these tasks and taking up these causes and get things done. We have social media that we can now leverage quite easily. And there are several issues that we agree on across the aisle, 110%. And so let's start getting stuff done. I fully, again, any citizen who is taking on action, whether I agree with their solution or not, I commend you completely because you're doing something. You're not just sitting around and complaining, you're actually getting involved. So I will tip my hat off to you, and we can have disagreements again politically, but I think ultimately most of us want great things for this country. And I think we can get there. It's just we have to learn to have civil political discourse again and seek some solutions that will, again, be most representative and also get things done. So
yes,
I appreciate you, Tripp. Thank you. Nice to meet some of you. Good to see you, Tony. Always good to see you, Tiffany.
Nice to see you, Erin.
All right. So from there, I do want to say that, yeah, like there's, compromise was the law of the land for like a long time. I know that there's a specific graph out there. I really wish I had it ready to show you guys, but like that in like the late 60s, early 70s, like the red and blue dots were a lot closer to the center, that kind of deal, because compromises were made, things were pushed. Like, I don't think that the civil rights movement would have made as much progress as it did if we had been so diametrically opposed as we are today. You know what I'm saying? All right, Tony, come right on up.
Before we get too far away from corruption, I want to say that there's an urban legend surrounding William Few at the Constitutional Convention, which, according to the urban legend, was held in the wintertime because the peasants wouldn't be able to travel there through the snow and the ice. And I'm going to say that that's been the case since. And when I was coming into my political awakening was during the Bush years, and as a liberal college kid, I thought it was just them. I thought it was like, it's just the Republicans who were doing this stuff, the cronyism and backdoor deals and making money and hedging their bets and retirement accounts in one way or another. To be disenfranchised from that and to realize just how intertwined corporate America is with DC and the state houses is really, really disturbing. And there's been, like, I think Josh Hawley had an anti-corruption bill at some point. If you go into Congress and you start searching around, you see how many times like this has been brought up, and then it's just kind of like, and that should be indicative of what we have going on here. And so in order for people to really be represented, I think this conversation, it's like David said at the beginning, Catalyst, this is a long game. And to get people involved, to understand local elections, to implement things like ranked choice voting or something similar to where we have more of a chance to get independence in, that's the groundswell that starts to take Congress. That's the groundswell that starts to make it more feasible to take action, real action against corporate ties to Capitol Hill, as well as insider trading and term limits. There's a whole bunch of things that start to change when we get more of us in those seats. And to me, this conversation around alternative paths to voting and ranked choice voting, it means more to me in those realms than it does the Oval Office. honestly. I think whatever we can do to get more independent voices in Congress is a smart step for everybody, because that's where we can go head to head with one another on all these differences that we have. Arguing on Facebook and TikTok isn't going to do a damn thing. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Arguing
absolutely.
does so much. It's so good at keeping us divided, so we don't actually do anything, Tony. Come on. It does so much good for billionaires. So much good.
That's just it. Like, really, what this is that they have disguised a large portion of what this actual fight is as a right versus left, when it's really up versus down. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is really,
I say that how many times a day? Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's
All
one of those,
day,
but it's
every
like
day.
one of those that we have to come to an understanding that, because I love what Deborah said on the last one about how we are inundated from like birth, from like, how we're supposed to survive, and like we get a bunch of programming, as it were. And I firmly stand on the idea that nobody receives the same programming. Like, me and my brother, any two people on this panel, like, we have been shown different things our entire life. And a lot of that is intentional. A lot of that is like, the puppetry, the trickery, the bread and circuses. And like, I don't want to sound tinfoily here, but like, it proves it out if you look at history, and so the only thing that we truly have is our engagement in the system. And that's one of the reasons why it's so it feels so divisive, and why it feels so easy to disengage is because that is, that's the last little bit of control that we have. And if we fully do relinquish it, like, as a collective all at once, like, if that voting goes from the 58 to 63% it is now to like 20, we're fucked. Pardon my French, but we are. And so like, I get why people don't want to vote, because it is just a battlefield of evils, but like, showing up and wanting to change that is going to do a lot better than just sitting back and watching the world burn. That's just how I feel about it. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Since you brought up the pivoting towards anti-corruption bills, I feel like maybe a lot of today's conversation, I don't know if this was discussed at the beginning, came from the Represent Us political action program, which is got some really good spokespeople. I actually like a lot of what they're doing. I feel like there's some things that are missing from it that would be essential to make it work the way that we want it to ultimately. When we talk about, we want the Constitution amended, or we want this, or we want that, if we're choosing how to focus our energy, and we are trying to focus on the things that are achievable, the anti-corruption bills are more achievable than any hope of changing the Constitution, right? Like, the only way we could change the Constitution is a 2/3 vote of the House and Senate. First of all, that's not going to happen on an issue like the Electoral College. That's not going to happen. And otherwise, you have to get 34 out of 50 state legislators to vote to convene a constitutional convention. That is the only way you can do it. It's also the only way we can overcome Citizens United, okay, is to get 2/3 of the House and Senate to vote for it, or to convene a constitutional convention with 34 of 50 legislators voting to do so. So when we are looking at what's actually achievable and where our efforts make the most sense, anti-corruption measures make the most sense, right? And no matter how we feel about the Constitution, how we feel about its outdatedness or its relevance today, overcoming the Constitution is not something that our country is built for, okay? Overcoming it is not something that we're built for on an issue that is divisive, on an issue where there is massive groundswell of support, possibly, but it still takes a bunch of politicians voting against their own interests to do it when it comes to voting, okay? So when we're looking at anti-corruption, there are things that we all want. We want term limits, or a lot of people want term limits. 98% of the population of the United States wants money out of politics, okay? 98% of us, okay? 98% of the United States wants corporations to not be able to control our politicians, okay? The problem we are suffering from right now in relation to that is that there is not transparency. This is something we could feasibly achieve. We could do that, okay? We can pass those laws, specifically if we go to the 18 referendum states. That is achievable, okay? We can't get the corporate money out because, again, we would need a constitutional convention or a 2/3 of both houses, right? And then a non-veto. But we could, in 18 referendum states, pass transparency laws that say that every dollar that passes through any election in any state or in the federal election in that state has to be disclosed to be on the ballot. We could pass that, okay? The problem we're suffering from as a whole is that right now There is a 0% correlation between the popularity of any ballot initiative and its likelihood of passing at the federal level. 0%. While there is an 84% correlation between a corporation's and donors' interest in seeing something passed and it actually passing the House and the Senate at the federal level. So we have to go to the states and we have to create a groundswell. I don't mean to, you please, it's your panel. You should just shut me off.
You're absolutely good. In fact, you're hitting on a point that I actually changed my background to kind of make this point here. And I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but this is the Princeton study where, like, if something is popular with the 99 or the 90%, it says here, it only has a 30% chance of passing, whether it is 0% popular or 100% popular. But if you're part of the elite, that looks a lot more like the ideal curve, which is, the more popular it is, the more likely it is to pass. It only happens for those of us who have the means, and that's really the big point of contention we're having with the corruption itself, because it's these people who are able to, like, shell out the dough as their form of free speech that gets the needle moved in their way. I personally think that this graph that, this study that Princeton did should be enough of a receipt to make most of the 90% furious and ready to go and, like, ready for change, like serious change. And I think the anti-corruption laws that are being proposed in Pennsylvania and other places, again, on the city lower levels, because it's not going to pass on the national level. Josh Hawley and AOC and all these different people can come out with this bright and shiny bill that says, yeah, we're working on it. But guess what? That's just a false flag to us. So that way, we can rest on our laurels like, well, at least they tried. But it's like honestly asking a fox to lock the hen house. So we've got to start from the ground up, especially with stuff like anti-corruption laws, in order for them to actually, see some real fruit of their labors. David, let's go and have you come up. You haven't spoken in a minute.
Yeah, Tripp. I agree, and I remember seeing that Anti-Corruption Act information with Represent Us or Represent.us a couple of years ago. And it's incredibly powerful. And to your point, when you say, hey, this ought to be enough to get people to move, unfortunately, we have to address the cynicism and the apathy of the American electorate, right? We could get anything done if we had all of these people who are online, who are constantly complaining and pointing it out and problem identifying and acting as if they were concerned, if they would just take some damn action, right? Every day I struggle with trying to compose myself and not lose my shit on this app every day, because if we would just work together, if we would just say, you know what, we got to get the money out. I mean, the guys at Represent.us and their plan is brilliant. There's the plan. There's the structure and everything. All it requires is we, the citizens, to engage. But because we're so damn fragile, because we're so caught up in our trauma, we want safe spaces. People would rather just bitch and moan and pretend to be so broken with their trauma that they won't do their duty as a citizen to fix what's fixable. And it's just, like I said, I don't have much hair now. I pull out what I've got left, because all we have to do is work together. There are millions of people on this app. There are millions of people who fawn concern about these things. We as we as influencers and potential influencers, in my case, we have to give people action steps and say, look, here's what I need you to do. Yeah, I understand you're upset. Yeah, I understand you're mad. Yeah, I understand that you tried and it didn't work out. Suck it up. I need you to figure out the emotional intelligence to be an activist, because this is what it is. And we have to do this work, because evil succeeds when good people do nothing. And right now, over the last 30 years, the American people have pretty much just done nothing. And we progressively do less and less, because we're always caught up in our feelings. So we don't take the action that we can take to change these systems. And so how do we do that is the question, right? How do we inspire people to stop just talking about it, to do the work, to say, hey, look, just do a little bit. I don't need you to do what I'm doing. I don't need you to start a nonprofit. I don't need you to produce programs. But I do need you to go volunteer at your city council and sit on the Park and Recs board. I do need you to go volunteer with your church, or I do need you to go volunteer with the police. I need you as my neighbor and my fellow citizen. I need to know that you're out here putting in some kind of effort and not just bitching and moaning on social media, because that gets us nothing. We've got to put some rubber to the road.
You're right. You're right. And honestly, that is a big part of, commitment to action and things does come from the idea that people have to show up. And sometimes it does feel, I'll meet you in the point where it feels like complaining on the internet, throwing words into a void, and commiserating definitely doesn't seem like it does a lot. But I also will say, like we discussed this, I think it was on the ethical consumption panel all the way back in the beginning, that sometimes people are looking for that solidarity in that moment, and there is a possibility to move them from a space of commiseration to a space of action and motivation, with finding like minds, with finding similar people. The idea is not to sit and stew. I agree with you there. The idea is not to just week by week complain about the same problem and be stuck in it, because in that regard, you're going to have a lot of issues with, stagnation. You might be able to gather like a good following of people who all feel and commiserate the same as you, but if you're not moving in a way to try and not necessarily fix it, but try and get out of the hole that you find yourself in, then yeah, that's a pity party, and nobody really wants to sit in a pity party for all too long. Some people get enjoyment out of it. It's not my ish. I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, but I think there's more progress to be made from the fact that we can find people to commiserate with and then try to motivate them out of that commisery with some semblance of action. And again, everybody's going to be passionate about something different. And I think in that's really the sauce of it. And from there, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tony.
One of the things that we need to do is get people of differing ideas into the same spaces. So in this panel, which I want to commend everybody here in the panel and everybody who's tuned in to the live, sharing spaces like this and engaging in it is actually the little steps that we start to take to figuring this stuff out. Because as you can see, if we went down the list of all the political wedge issues with everybody that's been in these boxes, there'd be about 30% we were like, rah, 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 friction, friction, friction. I don't know. But then there'd be a large chunk of it where it's just like, if we were a committee voting, we'd be like, yep, pass, yep, next agenda item. And if we want that, then engaging with politics or your community is the surest way to do it, because people want to say anything they want about a plan. But it's like I've told Tripp since last year and a half ago when we met, every single political idea starts with one phrase that everyone says as quickly as possible because it's the hardest step, and it's got to get everybody together. We got to get everybody together. And they say it real quick and they just blaze over it, because then what we do is we structure it like this, and X amount percent goes over here. And it's like, none of that matters if we don't know how to get everybody together. And in order to do that, we need to show people that it's okay to exist in spaces with people who disagree with you. You will not die most of the time. Okay? As long as everybody's showing up with respect, you're safe here. Because the goal is to get to a destination of equal representation and a system that benefits us like a smart organism. So thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing this. Make sure you're tapping on the screens and liking and doing all of that, because I hope that this is one of 1,000 channels that are doing this over the next 2 or 3 election cycles. More people who disagree trying to figure it out. So good on all of you. I'm going to eat my soup now.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And I actually think I'm going to take a moment to kind of wrap it up a little bit, start preparing us for some final words. We're about at the hour and a half mark. I want to first and foremost say that this has been an incredible conversation that went a lot of different directions, as I was expecting it to. I'm really excited that y'all will spend the time, sit at this table with people who definitely don't see eye to eye as the rest of us, and there's a beauty in that. So I want to genuinely thank each and every single one of you, and I will do so as well as I bring you up on your final words. I want to start us off, though. I want to say that the landscape that we are currently standing on is constantly changing, and that's a good thing. That's the best thing. the last thing we want is stagnation. That is death. So we see progress like ranked choice voting with Prop 131 in Colorado. We see, the anti-corruption acts, and we see, the National Popular Vote Compact. We see all of this sorts of new political strategy as a way to keep that landscape shifting, hopefully towards progress. And I'm not entirely sold that any one of these is an end-all be-all answer. I don't think one of them alone is, for sure. But what I see is potential to bring about something new that may do great things, may do terrible things. But like, we're the adults in the room, we get to decide. And I think that breaking the two-party system and to some extent, at least restructuring the Electoral College is kind of important at this point, because it has not served us very well. That's my personal standpoint. Some people here agree, some people don't, and that's a beautiful thing, because they're still willing to sit here and have a discussion with me. So, like, again, thank you all. Thank you all the panelists who have been here, and thanks to I don't think I've ever actually had a room over 100 people. So, yay! Thank you, everybody. Yay! I'm so excited. Just real quick, next week we're dropping Big P politics entirely. We're going to be talking about engaging in community. I have a list of different ways that you can get involved, like literally in your town and in your neighborhood. It's going to be a really exciting thing. That's going to be November 12th, week after the election. But thank you for being here. Thank you for being in the space. And for those who are showing up to vote, thank you for doing so. Thank you for participating in said system. Whether we work to change it into something better or we just keep participating and hoping for the best, like we're doing something, and that is something to be commended for. And I think on that note, we're going to go ahead and start turning to last words. Now I'm just going to go right down, like as usual, down the list here one by one. Thank you guys so much for being here. Off to Wagon, you get the pleasure of being first for last words today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm not sure if it's the pleasure going first for this, because we kind of left off on such a random place. I don't even have my thoughts gathered for last words, but I do think that it's important to have these conversations, and we can all talk about the frustrations of what will and won't change and what is and is not possible for change. But the one thing for sure is nothing's going to change the way that we want it to if we don't at least pay attention to what's going on and engage in some form or fashion. And I think that that's one thing that every single one of us can agree on here. And so right now we have the easiest way in the world to engage in right now to election day. Early voting's open, absentee voting's open. You can go in on the day and vote, but that is the bare minimum of civic engagement and the very first step in hopefully moving this country in a direction you want to see it and we all want to see it. And then after that, we can reconvene and start figuring out the best path forward to make these fundamental changes that we need to have happen in this country if we hope to maintain some sort of democracy and universal representation for everybody who lives here.
Right on. Word. Well said, my friend. Thank you so much. Unbraced, again, thank you for coming and bringing the Ballotpedia and stuff. I really appreciate that and everything that you do, my dear. Thank you.
I don't know your mic.
Boom. Is that better?
That's
Yes.
it.
Okay. Honestly, I'm still learning on here. I think all of us are kind of like, not all of us, a lot of us are like at the beginning phase of this, finally kind of turning to like, what can I possibly do? And feeling hopeless so long. Now we're like recognizing that we do have the power. They have just made us think we don't. And if they continue to keep us divided on things that religion will never let us agree to and things that our ideologies will never let us agree to, we won't actually understand that there are certain things that we absolutely will agree to. Like, we all know we don't want money in politics. We all know that we want to have a say in our government. In fact, not just want to, it is our right. It is the reason we're in this space and following the laws, because we're supposed to have a say in our government. But as long as we're still fighting over things we can't, it's not going to get anywhere. So I think when we realize that there's a stopping point, there's something that won't allow us to get ahead, we need to put that on the outlier thing and say, this is an outlier conversation that we may never get to the bottom of. We need to start talking about the things that affect us every day, all day, and everyone. Clean air, clean water, clean food. We're not talking about those things. No one cares about that thing. Instead, we're talking about abortions, which was settled a year ago. You know what I mean? Settled already 50 plus years ago. Instead, we're talking about what they tell us to talk about instead of what we want to talk about. So I think it's time for us to start being the power in front of the conversations instead of behind it. It's time for us to not allow them to use their words to co-opt things like, oh, the left. What does the left really mean? Nothing. It just means not MAGA at this moment. That's what it means today, right? Like everyone else is on the, no, that's why we can't move things. We need to start defining our own terms. We need to start moving our own things and doing it in our own way. So long as each one of us are moving both in the system and out of the system in our own ways, they can't stop us. There's too many moving pieces for them to be able to make the laws to stop us, for them to be able to disenfranchise us any longer. So keep moving, keep doing what you're doing as you think it's right, and make sure that it is with the essence of what is best for the community. And thanks for having me.
Right on. And like I know that one size won't fit all, and so that's the important piece there. And I thank you for that, Tony. I appreciate you coming up as always, my friend. Thank you for your words and your time.
Muted again.
I'm just joking. I'm not actually muted.
Oh.
Heyo.
Got us.
Got him. Okay, so the first thing I think we need to address is corruption, because if we know through the Princeton study that we're not being represented, then I don't really see how any of the arguments we're trying to have with one another matter anyway, unless they can slip some pork in the bill that's going to benefit their buddies on the golf course, okay? So to me, that is step one, and if we know that's a point of unity, then we have to start selecting candidates who are going to go down that path for us. I don't know any other way that we start to get out of this without totally trying to silence or squash the other side. That's not going to work. It's clearly not. And that's not very human of us, not very humanist of us. So first is corruption. We work on representation. Go to represent.us. If anybody has not gone to that, or if it's been a while since you've seen it, go there, watch their little presentation. Pretty sure like Jennifer Lawrence and someone else is in there. Maybe Michael Douglas or something like that. Or maybe that was the Forward Party. I don't know. But there's a lot of plans that we could have to untangle the corruption. Phase 2 of that is going to be involving ourselves in our local communities. Now, that could be through politics. That could be through local organizations. It could be through after-school programs, summer camps, extracurriculars like dance and baseball, martial arts, and hosting D&D parties, whatever it is that you feel like you need to contribute, because the more we get together, not just in spaces of debate, but just in general, the more we learn about one another. The more we learn about one another, the less scary we become to one another. And that is the space where we're willing to go toe-to-toe with one another on our ideas, what we think is best, because politics is a state of friction. And if we can't handle that heat, then nobody's going to go in the kitchen. And if nobody's in the kitchen, then the only people who are going in there are the shareholders. And we clearly don't want the food that they're trying to give us. So we have to be able to handle the heat in these places. And I respect anybody who's willing to do it and put their brain and their hearts and their thoughts on the line for a whole room of people to be like, it's a scary thing to do. But I think we all need to be a lot more comfortable with it. Know your neighbor, get rid of corruption, and then we'll check in again in 2 to 4 years and see how it worked for us. Thanks for doing this, Tripp, and thanks for everybody for being here and for sharing and liking.
Word. Thank you, my friend. David, once again, I am super stoked that you have been here, my friend. Thank you, and it's your turn.
Awesome. Thank you, Tripp. And thanks everybody here for everything that you do. Obviously, it takes all of us. It takes a village. And there are a lot of things that are going to happen first, right? And we think, hey, what's the first thing that we need to do? A lot of this stuff is going to happen concurrently, right? Because we definitely have to address corruption. We have to address so many things, but until we have consciousness within the American electorate, within our fellow citizens, until we have some citizen reform where everybody says, a plurality of us say, hey, look, what are my duties as a citizen in this collective? What am I supposed to do outside of just voting and paying my taxes? Those are the minimums. I have to engage every day in some small way to be of service to this collective, right? So I think we've got to address the corruption. Undoubtedly, we got to address that. But I think a bigger thing is this apathy that's in our society now. That's why I started the anti-apathy campaign, because I was like, look, doing nothing is not an option. What are you willing to do about it? What are you willing to contribute and serve where you live to be part of the solution? Because we have these tools. We things go viral every day, right? What if the solution of citizen reform went viral and everybody said, you know what? Yeah, I can be a better neighbor. I can be a better citizen. I haven't been real good. I don't know politics. I don't do politics, right? That's a big popular phrase. I don't do politics. Well, politics isn't our problem. Our lack of shared values is our problem. Politics is how we get things fixed. Politics is how you get your roads fixed. Politics is how you get a new school built in your city because your population has grown, right? Politics is how we get things fixed if you have shared values and decency and kindness and coping skills and communication skills, right? If you don't have those things, then all you do is fight and argue and complain and vilify. So we've got to do the work. We've got to understand that our job is not to be activists, right? To be citizen activists, and to know that some of this work we're doing, we won't live to see the fruit, but we got to do the work. And so thank y'all all for everything that you do, because I know everybody here on this panel is making contributions based on your desire to be part of the solution, right? I don't think anybody up here is just up here talking for the sake of talking. They want to be part of the solution. So hats off to everybody here with that. And again, we disagree vigorously on here on some of these things, but I have tremendous respect for everybody here who is trying to be part on the panel, and I'm honored to be included in this conversation. And please let me know if I can help you with anything that you're doing. So if there's a program or something that you're doing and you need bodies or you need something, let me know. I don't know what I don't know. So if you ask me, I can ask my network, and then maybe we can get you some resources. So thank you for including me, Tripp. Y'all have a great one.
Word. I love that call to action right there at the end, man. Thanks for that. Miss Tiffany, thank you so much for coming up and being a part of this discussion. It is truly appreciated.
No problem. I don't have some big grand closing statement I want to make. Honestly, I started working in the independent and political sphere because I went to a presidential rally and I asked a hard question of a candidate, and suddenly they wanted to hear more from me. I'm not saying it works that way all the time, but I am saying that's how it worked for me. And then people on here gave me a voice. And since then, we've been trying to pass laws, and I'm working in a bunch of different states, and I'm interviewing presidential candidates, doing all these things. And I believe that is possible. I believe there's a world where us making our voices louder than the corporations want them to be is possible. I believe that we have more in common than divides us, despite the way it sounds sometimes in the rhetoric on this app. It is a fact that we have far, far, far more in common than we have that divides us. It is a verifiable fact that that everybody is led to believe by major corporations and the people that propagandize us that we should be left versus right, when in fact we all have more in common than we will ever have in common with a 1%er. We are not left right, as I heard you say earlier. We are up versus down, and every one of us is in the down. Nobody on this app that's talking to anybody is in the up, okay? And so it's really, really important that everybody remember that even the neighbor you have the least amount in common with, according to what they've told you. The two people at the end of my block, one with a BLM flag and a pride flag, the other one with a Confederate flag, they have more in common with one another than either of them will ever have in common with the 1% that tell them to hate each other. But it is very, very convenient for the people that are increasingly monopolizing the wealth in this country. It is very, very convenient for those people to keep us fighting with one another. And so I cannot stress enough every time I come into any one of these panels to remind you that you will get so much more accomplished reaching out a hand than you will knocking down a bridge, right? Or building a wall between yourself and your neighbors. It is so, so, so important to remember that we will only ever accomplish anything we are talking about with the help of the people we believe or have been led to believe we disagree with. There is nothing we will accomplish without them. Nothing. Not anything of meaning or substance, if I'm going to be frank. Okay? And so I stress, and I continue to stress to everybody, that as much as you've been told to hate one another, hate is easy. Hate is easy, but agreeing to disagree and seeking ways to find the places where your values maybe overlap, or where you even have just moments of understanding with why your views disagree. Those are the places where you actually change things. And the more that we don't allow them to divide us, the more we're actually winning in this battle of propaganda and just hatred. Okay? I believe that there's a very large turning of the tide coming. And we're going to see something the likes of which we haven't seen maybe since the civil rights movement, perhaps since the anti-war movement of Vietnam, but I think it's going to be bigger than that. Because right now we've seen the top 10% of our country holding 90% of the wealth, when just 30 years ago they only held 64% of the wealth. And that is an unsustainable trajectory. And there will come a breaking point, but it will only succeed if we turn to each other and find those things that bind us, so that we're able to capitalize on all of that energy to make a fundamental difference. And I think we're all capable of that. So that's always where I finish. Thanks for having me on.
I could not agree with you more. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Muted. Or pulling a Tony on us.
Ha! No, I was actually muted. Thank you for everybody being here. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope you all have just the most fantastic day. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Maybe done that a little too soon, but that's okay. I knew going into this that it was kind of risky inviting people up from different sides of the spectrum, but we saw a really cool thing happen, which was genuine conversation. Yeah, we got a little bit off and into some weeds. We didn't get to a couple of things I want to talk about. You know, these times go by so darn fast. But it was a good conversation. We respectfully sat down at a table, virtual or not, and, you know, talked about difference of opinions when it came to new political strategies. That's fantastic. That is, you know, that's one of those things that I wish there'd be more and more of. Just like Tony said, I hope this time next year or this time next election cycle, there's 1,000 channels doing exactly what I'm doing, because that'd be dope. But then, of course, I inevitably would be like, I'd have to go, you know, I did it before it was cool. But I really appreciate those who stuck around. Again, I think that's the first time I've ever got over 100 people watching at the same time. So huzzah! I knew politics was going to do it. November 12th, we're dropping Big P politics entirely, because I know I'm not the only one who's tired. I know I'm not the only one who's tired. Yeah, hipster politics, exactly. I know I'm not the only one who's tired with it. And, like, we're going to be picking it back up, because, of course, it's not going to be this ebb and flow. We only talk about it during election season. However, we're trading Big P politics for small P politics, the kind of stuff that we have to do every day of the week, whether it's election season or not. The stuff of making community members and, you know, doing that sort of deal. I have a large list in this book right here that's going to be ready for that on November 12th, which will be the next one. Yeah, guys, I really appreciate it. Just like all of these, it's fantastic to have these people sitting in the room with me for as long as y'all did. I'm so grateful. So very, very grateful. And to all of the new followers, welcome to my corner of cyberspace. I hope you really enjoy the show. And until next time, be well, fellow citizens. Thanks for being here. Truly.